G'day guys and welcome to Warrior by Design. I'm Benjamin John, I'm your host. And once again, I promised you we're going to interview some people, some real authentic people that have been there, done it and know their shit, right? So I've got Brooke with me today. Brooke, you want to give us a bit of a heads up on your name and the name of your company if you can.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name's Brooke, and yeah, I've recently founded a company called Nectar Psychology, and the etymology of the word is nec and tar, which in Latin means the fear of overcoming death. And yeah, the reason why I chose the name is because in life, and especially in psychology, which I'm a psychologist, so yeah, the name comes from we are continuously dying to parts of ourselves. When we become aware of the pattern, we can choose to die to that part. And anytime we become aware of a pattern and we choose that it no longer serves us, there is a process of grief that goes with that, because that pattern had a function. And as a child, we were mirrored that was our function. And yeah, and it can be really heartbreaking when we come out of that pattern. So, and liberating too. So that's why I gave it the name Nectar.
Yeah, and how amazing and how fitting too, Brookie, right? And and I just want to put it out there, guys. Brooke is 33 years of age. This lady has founded her business. This girl has been an entrepreneur from way back. She's always done what she requires to do to get what she needs in life, right? This girl has been dedicated for herself, dedicated in creating the lifestyle that she wanted, and creating this through whatever means that she needed to do to create this life. Brooke has been an achiever and an overachiever her whole life from what I know of her. Brookie has been a big part of my life ever since I done a development class with Benjamin Veens, who we'll be talking to in a later date. And we've really connected from there. And Brookie's been an inspiration to me personally. You guys know that I'm 40 years of age now, and it's so awesome to see someone like Brooke who has been able to overcome aspects of her life that would be massive, who will have been and would be seen as massively traumatic by some people, right? And by a lot of people. And I'd struggle to see how people would be able to live the life Brookie has and not be affected in some way. The good news is Brookie's been able to work on herself to be able to come to a place where in her life she has what is called choice, right? Which is what Brookie was touching on before. With her name and everything about it, right? Those aspects of ourselves that are willing to die to be able to create new experiences and new awareness. Can you touch a little bit about, your past and where you've come from, Brookie, and how you've been able to achieve what you have at 33, a life of choice and independent?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
No worries.
So, okay. So if I'm to date back, maybe like 15 years. Okay. So I'm just thinking where to begin. Okay. So basically for me, there was an area, like I'll start from 18. So there was an area where I was like, oh, what do I want to do? And then I sort of got given a signal to become a paramedic. And, there was just got a sign from the universe, and it was through a friend. And sorry, that's my cat. And God bless.
Bring him in, or bring her in if she wants.
Right. I'm gonna say hello. Little Boucher, meaning samurai in Japanese. I'm into my etymology. But yeah, so basically the reason why I'm bringing this up is because at that moment I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And then when I was exposed to the paramedic scene for 4 years, I was triggered a lot by childhood abuse within the families. And there was a part of me that sat with myself despite the turmoil that I was going through. And I connected to something else. And through that connection, that was the connection that gave me the inspiration to be on the path that I'm on, because that connected me to humanity and to something that wasn't about me. And it connected me to something a lot bigger. And the point of me bringing this in is because for me to be where I am right now, it's never been about personal gain. It's always about something bigger. It's never been connection to money or anything. And I just really want to reiterate that, because I think that's really important when you're on your path. You know, I've come from a really like traumatic background. And a lot of the time people are like, how are you where you are because of like based on what you've been through? Because a lot of people would end up, you know, on the streets, on drugs, prostitution, all that sort of stuff. And for me, it's been literally being connected to something bigger than myself. And that's been despite going through the rubble of life and like repatterning what I'd gone through and living, you know, feeling all the emotions that were buried. Despite all that like rubble, I was connected to humanity and my mission. And so no matter what I went through, I was able to swim through that and still stay so connected to my life's path. And does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does 100%, Brookie. And I think, you know, you touched on a few important parts there in relation to, you know, one is you decided to make choices, right? You decided to make choices for yourself. And, you know, even the monetary aspect, why some, you know, if I can be completely blunt, you know, Brookie's done really well for herself over the years, right? And though her actual drive wasn't monetary one, she can still have a successful and have a lifestyle of choice through the means of having, you know, multiple choices in regards to the energetic sense of money, which we currently use as an exchange, right? So that the fact that you've been able to have a life of choice, even though it's not driven itself by that monetary aspect, you've still been able to have that relationship, right? And you've still been able to have a healthy relationship with that to give you basically those, there's a specific word I'm trying to think of right now, units of choice, right? If we look at the money that is like that, that money was able to give you units of choice to be able to do what you want to do. And I think,
can I interject there for a second, Benjamin?
100%, go for it.
Yeah, so touching on what you're saying right now, I truly believe that when you're connected to something higher than yourself, it's not just about yourself. A trust builds where no matter what, you're going to be looked after. And, you know, at this current point, you know, for a long time now, the energetic transaction has been through money. And because I've been connected to something so much greater than myself, I've always been looked after energetically through money, and which has given me a diversity of being able to like have lots of choices and travel and do everything that I want to do. And also to help facilitate non-for-profit projects, which it didn't matter that I wasn't working for a chunk of time, because I've always been looked after and had that foundation.
Yeah, 100%, Brookie. And I think like I resonate with that quite personally myself, you know, in relation to what I've achieved in life. And most certainly, you know, from what people would see as my structure, my foundation to be able to have those means or units of choice in the way of monetary gain or whatever, I've always been looked after. I've always had options and choices that have come into my life to be able to build the life I have today. And it hasn't been about a specific direction or a specific way of achieving that. Though, again, as you say, that connection to something greater than myself has always supplied me opportunities to be able to potentially take or be able to focus on, to be able to give me those units of choice required to live the life that I see as a meaningful one.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I resonate with that 100%.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, Brookie, I suppose I'd love to ask you the question, you know, like, because the big thing about Warriors by Design and why I've created this, right? And part of my intro is basically getting past the glamour and the fantasy, and who we are in humanity, right? Because there's a lot of people, and I know I've done this myself over time, where people will put other people that they see in a place of achieving what they want to achieve, at times put them on pedestals, right? And I don't know about yourself, Brookie, but certainly within the professions you've been around, the people, the groups, and all the people that you've been around personally, I found myself that not one person that I've come across that's been successful or been able to make choices for themselves has ever come from a place other than one of challenges to be able to work through to get to where they are now classified, or even put on pedestals by others as successful. What's your experience been by that?
Can you say that last sentence again? So
I certainly can. So what I basically said was that I found personally, with the people I've worked with, or those that would be put on pedestals at times as achieving what others would like to achieve, my experience with those people is most of them, if not all, have come from a place of struggle to achieve that.
100%, definitely.
To achieve that aspect of what is seen as success, or some would even put on pedestals. What's been your experience with that, with those people you've come across, who other people, not necessarily us, who other people would say are potentially successful, or someone they look up to?
Well, I think you can look at this question in a couple of different ways, to be honest, Benjamin. Yeah. So based on and first of all, it comes down to how you define success.
Exactly.
And yeah, so for me, success is two-tiered. So it's like, success is, can someone sit with themselves? Can they sit with their emotions? Can they explore themselves? And can they do that? Because through that creates extreme humbleness, because you remember your history and where you came from. So I define that as success. And I know society, and also that the second leg of that is words mean nothing to me, in a sense, so it's always about an action. So, an action can literally be saying nothing but walking humbly on this earth, and that is an action. And so I see it as two-tiered, yeah. So, and I know with society, it's very based on this superficial layer. What has someone achieved? How many degrees do they have? How much are they earning? This sort of thing. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I feel like there can be two types of successes. So there can be people that have, can really sit with themselves, and they can also put their ideas into action to facilitate, the greater good. And I see that as truly successful. But then you can also have blinded success. So people who look really successful, they're earning a lot in a societal perspective, from a societal perspective, but internally they're dead. Yeah. So I just really wanted to tease that apart, just so that we don't have an illusion of success. Yeah.
I think that is so bloody important, and I'm so happy, because I knew that it would be a good answer. So, and how true is that, right? Because there is an illusion to what someone's interpretation may or may not be with success, right? And again, though at this point in time, units of choice, whatever they may be, right? Again, at this point in time, people may look at that as a monetary thing, but from someone else's perspective, that could be a veggie garden full of veggies that they could barter, or that could be, something they internally know, or something they internally energetically want to share with others, right? There's so many different ways that this can be interpreted. And I think that's so important, because you hit the nail on the head, and exactly where I wanted to go with it is, the reality is, what is success, right? What is success? Because it's got really it has nothing to fucking do with it. I think what I think success is, and truly what you think success is, right? It's about us finding our own internal measure of success and what that is for us, and I think that is a huge, if that is for me, can be so beautiful, and the exploration in that really, really beautiful.
Beautiful, Benjamin. Would you mind if I add something to
that?
that?
I would love you to.
Yeah, so just, I guess, for the listeners, like something to think about or feel into, whichever you prefer, is in our society, we're really taught to like live up here. And so when we measure success, it can be from cognition and pretty much conditioning that we've been handed down from either our parents or through societal expectations, if this person ticks this box sort of thing. But, I invite you to, rather than think about success up here, feel into it. Like, when you interact with someone, yes, they may have all these boxes ticked up here, but how do they feel? How do they feel? Are they someone that you walk away and you feel inspired to be a better person, and walk on this earth in a more humble way? Or do they leave you the opposite way? So just, invite you to feel into what success really feels like, rather than just like a cognitive ticking of boxes, because that's generally based on conditioning.
Yeah, I think that's so important, isn't it, Brooke? And, I was actually going to touch on it, and I think I still will in a later date, but I think this is really bringing us into that word discernment, right? And understanding what discernment means for us, because, I mean, if I take away the fluffy kittens and all the energetic aspects of it, and I'll bring this back down to the real shit, and though Brookie knows that I'm all about the energetics and I'm all about the fluffy kitten stuff too. But if I want to bring this right back in, it's really understanding is what's true for me in this moment. What's right for me in this moment? How does this feel for me? Does this resonate with me or doesn't? Does that person resonate with me or doesn't? Do I get that feeling, as Brookie said? Do I get that feeling that this is good? This is leaves me have that, if we want to call it that nice buzz or whatever internally. Or is it something I walk away going, oh, I don't know. Like, I just have that feeling of, I don't know, like I'm just not, and I think that discernment's true. Can I ask Brookie, how do you discern for yourself, and what would you look at as healthy discernment?
Yeah, I love this question. All right. So this is a tool that like I learned along my time when I was just trying to piece things together. And because for me, one way that I dealt with my experience of trauma was I became very intellectual, like I was very smart. Yeah. So like I've done like a lot of degrees. So I used to intellectualize everything. And as I started to feel into life more, I was like, why am I having so much like confusion, about different people, about different settings? And what I started to realize was that we actually have a couple of energy systems that receive information. And so this is what I started to do in order to help with my discernment along life. Was I thought, okay, so we've got a brain. Okay, so we get input to our brain. We get input to our heart. We get input from our gut, and also input from our sexual organs. So one way that I discern personally is I check in with each system, because sometimes my brain can send me a message of like, oh, this is good, but it could be based on past conditioning of ticking boxes. So this looks good. But all of a sudden, my gut is like totally just firing, not happy. And my heart's like, oh, like this doesn't feel good. And so what I try and do is I try and differentiate each message, like from each system. If I'm in a state of like, I don't know what's really going, like I feel a little bit confused, it feels a bit good, a bit not good. So that's what I use to discern. And one thing I would like to reflect to the audience is that, you know, everyone's truth is so different. And, you know, sometimes we can have, let's say, an opportunity. And if we were to take that opportunity and ask 10 different people's opinion, that all say something different. So I really want to reflect the importance of realizing that you, above everyone, know what's true for you, and everyone's truth is so different. And an opportunity could look great to someone else, but in your body is like, no, and that's okay. And I just really wanted to reflect that and the wisdom of the body. And our bodies can literally, like, we could have an opportunity arise and our bodies could tune into that, and it could see like something going wrong if we took that opportunity like a year later. So what I'm trying to say is trust your own truth and tune into your own body systems. And if you are confused, try and differentiate each level from the head, the heart, the gut, and the sexual organs, because they all receive different information.
Yeah, I think that's so important, isn't it? Because, you know, I think, like we talk about the intellectual so often, you know, and we kind of really at times don't give enough credit to those other areas and those other centers really of being able to observe and being able to discern from, right? Because we're sometimes so caught up in the intellectual side of things and the head that, you know, and the funny, amusing thing for me personally is, especially when my experiences in my life and in my world and in my reality weren't what I really truly wanted, in my head was chaos. And trying to discern from that, trying to discern from that place that's within my head that's chaos is like, it's beyond trying to find that needle in the haystack, right? It's beyond trying to, you know, certainly it was for me in that moment of, you know, like being suicidal to where I am today, when I was in those real dark places. If I was trying to discern, if I discerned everything from my head, I'd be getting so many mixed messages, right? And were they true or not, I don't know. And I think that's a really important part of those other centers, being able to differentiate between, okay, like this is, you know, my brain's going, this is amazing, I'm going to make $1 million. But my heart's going, oh, dude, I don't know. Like, I'm not getting a good feeling. My gut's going, yeah, it's churning, man. I'm like, oh, I don't know, this isn't right, you know? And even, as you said, like, even the sexual organs, I'm getting the puckering of the, you know, that puckering people talk about, you know, the sphincter going, whatever, you know, whatever, all those things are going off, but the brain's going, oh man, I'm going to make $1 million. And we ignore all that other shit going on sometimes, right? And I think that's so important. And definitely. I love how you explain that. Is there anything else you'd love to share on that, Brookie?
Yeah, I would actually.
Yeah, totally.
Always got something to say.
No, lovely.
What I would like to share on is, you know, how you're touching on times when, you know, individuals are going through dark times and when we are getting a lot of mixed messages. I just wanted to touch on that part because, you know, it's actually a really important part. And you know, I guess, Benjamin, you and I, we're both really lucky because we've really invested in ourselves and done a lot of development. So we can clearly differentiate now between, you know, and sometimes it's still a bit gray, but it's a lot more clearer. Yeah. So just would like to provide a message for individuals that, you know, are maybe at the start of their journey or just sort of trying to navigate. And the message that I have that I'm being tuned into to give is that, you know, often on this journey, especially when we've come, like everyone's come from trauma, but let's say we're an internalizer, we're very empathetic, we're very caring about other people, we don't want to hurt other people. I just want to reflect that, like, a really important step is we can often end up very confused because rather than tuning into our own body, we're always tuning into the environment and how everyone else is feeling before we tune into ourselves. So you know, when we're doing that, we're like, okay, everyone's okay, but we've forgotten about ourselves. And then what that can create is the vicious loops of like confusion, you know, quite dark energy, because it's all muddled up. So I just wanted to reflect, you know, maybe, you know, a starting point for those individuals, you know, is always come back to yourself first. And I know to get to this place, you know, it takes a bit of work, so I don't want to discredit that. But, you know, coming back to, you know, you've just had an interaction with someone. Okay, how did I feel about how they spoke to me? Okay, like tuning into us first before we try and create understanding for our environment. Because otherwise, yeah, we end up in chaos. And it's like, you know, you're saying sorry for things when you haven't even done anything wrong. And then you end up really confused and then in chaos, and trying to get out of that jungle can be, you know, quite a job. So I just really wanted to reflect the importance of like, where are you at? Like in your life, your responsibility is yourself, above and beyond anyone else. And so I just really wanted to reflect that message.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, Brookie, and certainly I can reflect that being my own journey and part of my own journey, right? And that's it's so important, I think, you know, to really understand that, you know, wherever we are in life, whether we are in that place of feeling that that's chaos and we're without choice and we don't have any options, and or even if we're, you know, partying at the Bahamas and everything's beautiful, and I've seen to have, you know, gold chains hanging off me and gold wings and everything's amazing. Like both aspects of reality really come to a point of understanding ourselves, right? And both places can also experience very similar things. So one that's one that's seen on the outside is to be potentially a cool experience, and one that's seen to be one that's not so attractive. Both realities could be experiencing the exact same thing, right? Especially certain times. And I think that's really important, like you said before, is coming to that place for ourselves where we allow ourselves and support ourselves enough to be able to look at options. Right. And
definitely.
And as you said, as yourself, Brookie, like, and, you know, again, I just want to touch Brookie and myself have both been through a lot of trauma too, right? And very, you know, different sides, but trauma's trauma, right? There is no right and wrong. There is no yours is worse than mine. There is no, because everyone's interpretation of what their trauma is their own interpretation and their own experience with it. And I think,
definitely.
And I think with that, you know, I'd like to bring it back to that point of trying to allow ourselves to be supported. Is, if you were to go into that, Brookie, how would you say that if I was someone that really wanted to support myself but just really didn't know how, do you have any tips or tricks for me to be able to potentially start looking at supporting myself?
100%. You come to the right person, Benjamin.
Love it.
So I can only speak from my own experience, and in order to grow from where I was to where I am, the true anchoring point was really becoming connected to the notion and the idea that inside me is a little Brookie. And so something like the first thing I would say to do is I just really feel that in all healing, it's like, if you don't include that inner child, like that's where all the healing is, you know, with becoming connected to that part of us. And, you know, for some people, this may be a foreign term, and that's okay. It was foreign to me too. And it was foreign to me because when I became connected to that part of me, what was under that and the emotions that I had to hold for that part of me, it was fucked up. Really, it was a lot. And, you know, I just think, I personally feel that anyone that's getting through anything, like whether it's an addiction, anything, if you become connected to the inner child within you, it is becoming connected to that part of us that is going to help us grow and shift through any abusive behaviors, whether it's abusive relationships, whether it's self-abuse, whether it's addiction, whether it's gambling, like, honestly. And I feel like, you know, there's broken trust with ourselves, you know, when we're going through life. And the first step is about, okay, how can I build that? And this may sound foreign to people, but it would make sense looking back if you listen to this. Yeah. But building trust with ourselves. And the most easiest tool that I say to like any of my clients is, okay, let's just start with regularly checking in with ourselves. You know, we just have an interaction with our mum. Okay, how do I feel after that? You know, and asking ourselves how we feel, you know, we're being vulnerable with ourselves because we've hidden our emotions for so long. So we start to build trust with that little part of us that's a little child. And when we're starting to check in with that part of us, that little child is like, oh, they're starting to care. This adult's caring about my feelings. Okay. So we start to daily just build the trust up. And that's when we can start to, that's the easiest tool to start to build trust with ourselves and the inner child again, so that we can eventually grow and shift through whatever is problematic within our lives at the current moment.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Brookie. And, you know, and as you said, there's going to be people out there that this is foreign to, and they'll be like, what the fuck? What's this fucking inner child shit? I'm going to know little child living inside of me, blah, blah, blah. And look,
Yeah.
and that's 100% fine, right? And then, guys, that's all about discernment. And I think, you know, for me personally, with my personal experience, you know, I'm ex-military, special forces background, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you right now, my little dude inside's been neglected for many, many friggin' years, right? And that's not necessarily anyone's fault or anyone. There's no fault in that. There's no judgment in that. But it's getting to a point where I was able to support myself in enough to be able to look inside. And when we talk about that little child, we're looking back at it. For me personally, I'm looking back at myself at that moment and going, how can I support you? How can I support you in being able to speak up? Because as society has, you know, sort of govern, and obviously everyone's environment's going to be different, but certainly society, and in Western society and here within Australia, you know, there's that, you know, children are to be, you know, seen but not heard, and some of those things that are out there, you know. And even when we're, you know, communicating, there's been this doctrine of, you know, children communicating with adults, there's got to be respect, and, you know, everyone's level of respect is different, and whatever, and everyone has their own interpretation on that. But I think all of us at some point can look back at ourselves as a child, and I would assume, and this is an assumption, but I would imagine it could be true, that we could look back at ourselves and our child and see that at some point we've felt shut down, and at some point we've felt not supported, right? And I think that aspect of ourselves internally, that little inner child that we're tapping into, is us now potentially as older human beings, you know. And that means if you're, you know, 10 years old and you're able to listen to this podcast and you're getting something from it, you can support yourself at 3. You can support yourself at 2. There's always an aspect of us being able to support ourselves, right? Always an aspect of us to be able to support ourselves and step up and go, I hear you. I allow you. I not even allow, I'm going to support you in having a voice. I'm going to support you in having a voice. And I now where I am at this moment, are going to support you in the best way I can.
Beautiful. Yeah. And like, just touching on the end of that, Benjamin, you know, supporting oneself to have a voice, and even going to the point of, you know, with my inner child, it's like, I support you to have this emotion, and I don't need to change it. I don't need to get rid of it. And it's like, yeah, like, that's valid. And, you know, something else I just wanted to touch on is for individuals that maybe have sort of have an idea of what we're talking about, or those that don't. An anchoring point to help you remember when you have experienced the inner child is, just think about, in your relationships, has there ever been a time where you've blown up or just had a tantrum, or, looked back and like, far out, like, oh my God, what happened? Because that is an insight to the inner child part of us. And that's not the adult part of us. That's a different part of us reacting. Yeah. So I just wanted to reflect that to the audience.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's so huge, Brookie. And look, and again, as you said, that there's aspects of this that are going to be foreign to people, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, guys, what it comes down to is about able to supporting yourself in a sense that allows you to feel safe, allows you to feel comfortable, and allows you to feel okay with being you. And as Brookie said, this is emotionally, this is physically, this is, verbally, this is with boundaries, with discernment, with just being okay with fucking being you. That's okay. Like, you are you, and that is okay. And you can support yourself in being you. And there is, while it may feel that it is in some times very bleak or, impossible to do this, there are others that can support you in this too, right? If you are in a space where you feel you can't support yourself in this is where there's people like Brookie out there that have an open mind to be able to explore who you are, what you need, without telling you this is how it has to be, this is how it should be, and being able to find your safe space, your safe place, and who you are within you. And Brookie, can I ask a little bit about the support that you offer for people and your visionary behind that?
Yeah, for sure. I also wanted to say, for me personally, like, to get to where I am, I've had so many mentors. I've had so many different therapists that I've worked with, Western system, Eastern system. Like, I've worked with so many people who've held space for me so that I can now hold space for myself in whatever I experience. And yeah, I just wanted to reflect that, because I feel that for myself. Like, have been severely independent, whereas now I'm very interdependent, and I can recognize when I need help. But at the start of that journey, reaching out and like getting support and help, it was really difficult. And the truth is, to be able to do this yourself, it's impossible. Don't you reckon, Benjamin?
Yeah, look, same with me, Brookie. You know that my journey's been the same. I've had to get to a place where I supported myself in reaching out, right? Because the more I reached out, the more that I interlinked with other people, and I sought stuff out for myself, certainly still having that discernment whether it's right or wrong for me. Though the more I was able to do that, and as you said, I love the interpersonal side of things. It's not about just being interdependent. It's that it's actually more about being interpersonal, right? Because that connection from others. I've had many mentors like you. I've had teachers. I've had done courses and been in containers with so many different people. I've had psychologists, yes, again, same Western and Eastern, and it really been on a big freaking journey just to find out what's right for me. And I think that's huge. That's certainly been a huge part of my journey also.
Yeah. And like, even with us, Benjamin, we've had a lot of, because we only go off the model we've been given. And so if we don't reach out, we're just going to stay on the same model. And the whole notion is like to upgrade from that model so that we can, live in a place of like deep health and contentment and peace. And yeah, Benjamin's been a massive part of my journey, where there's been moments where I've called Benjamin and we'll just flesh some stuff out, and it's just helped me upgrade straight away rather than being stuck in a loop.
Yeah, and same for me, Brookie. And this is the thing, right? About having those connections, like me with Brookie. Like, there's been so many times where there may be some of that little chaos going on in their head where, even though it's not the crazy chaos it was, there might be just a little bit of chitter chatter, right? And even sometimes there has been a bit of that chaos happening, and having these personal and interconnected moments where we're able to communicate with someone and have that help and reach out has been so huge. And I think that is really important. And again, everyone that I know of within my awareness right now that has gotten to a place where they feel that they're moving on the right path, or they're doing what they want to be doing, has also reached out, and taken that step. And again, at times it's really hard. Like I spent, though I reached out a lot of times, I spent, 18 years of my journey going through crazy loops and whatever and it was very here and there that I reached out, right? And the more that I was able to do that, the more that I was able to find what I needed. I could, as you said, now it's more about if I'm at a place where I need something, I'll go out and get it, and I'll reach out and I'll ask someone, and that took a lot of years to get to there for me personally.
Totally. Yeah, me too, Benjamin. And one point I just want to make on that is, when Benjamin and I are talking about reaching out, it's not reaching out because we think someone's going to just put a Band-Aid and just fix us. For me personally, reaching out is like, okay, I recognize I'm at a point that I don't really know what's going on within myself, and I need some help. And it's not because I don't want to take, and that is me taking responsibility so that someone can hold space for me to be able to sift through what's going on so that I can come to a place of clarity and deep truth. And I just really wanted to reflect that's where they'll come to me and they'll think that I'm going to solve what the space that they're in. And, I'm very upfront where I say, well, I can't do that for you. That's just not going to happen here. Like, if you want to work with me, you've got to do the work, and it's about taking responsibility for yourself. And I can, help along that pathway. But ultimately, we are the only person that can actually heal ourselves, like literally.
Yeah, and 100%, Brookie, and that's the more and more that I have worked on myself, the more and more I've realized. And I think, again, all the listeners and everyone watching, I think there'll be some point in your life. Again, it's a bit of an assumption, but I would assume there's some point in your life you'd be able to look back and go, no matter how much someone loved you or thought they'll give you the right advice or most guided, intellectual advice, you don't usually do things until you make the decision to do them, or you make the decision it's right for you, or you make the decision that that's what you need, or you make the decision that this is okay. Now, there are obviously exceptions to that rule, and there are obviously exceptions to where there's things that can go around that. But the healthy choices that I've found for myself is when I've decided to make them for my own choice, for me, because I wanted to better me. Even at times when I thought that I was doing them for other people, it turned out in the end to be for me.
Beautiful, Benjamin.
Yeah.
And the real power lies there, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have to go to someone every time to be in tune with what's going on in your internal world. Like, we want to cultivate that for ourselves, so that we're in tune with ourselves. We give ourselves what we weren't given, which is attunement for a lot of people.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah. Oh, so to answer your question, yeah, so in terms of my work, so I specialize in trauma specific, all traumas, but specifically with sexual abuse and childhood neglect. And and I work in a fashion where it's interesting because this has come up recently in my work, where I give people the option of pretty much the masculine or the feminine way, because a lot of people are still very much in their heads, and to work with me in a feminine way is really jarring for them. So I give them the option of, we can set goals and go down the treatment, that line of working towards goals. And then the second option is we work with the wisdom of your body, and we let like in a very holistic fashion. And I let them, just express themselves, what comes up. And then we understand like the different patterns and, to help them through what they're going through. Because based on my awareness, whenever we're in a situation that we've already been in and it's just louder, so it hurts more, is because we're ready to confront the past where there's been stored, so the past where there's stored trauma, and we haven't had our emotional expression around that. So therefore we're presented with another current experience, which is a representation of the past, and it's a way that our psychology can then heal the past experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, it does, Brooke. And I think, again, I think if we kind of bring that into that sort of, I suppose, people are like, oh, what's this energetic and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, guys, kind of my own experience with this is there's very scientifical explanations for a lot more of the stuff that's being classified as airy, fairy, fluffy kitten stuff, right? More and more, we're seeing science being able to close the gap between some stuff that's been spoken about for centuries and generations, i.e., meditation being helpful, and some of these more holistic ways of doing things like yoga and body work and movement and even, creativity and all these other aspects of ourselves. But more importantly, I think from a Western societal point of view, even though there's a lot of books out there now, and we have YouTube and Google and podcasts and all this sort of stuff that we have, that we're doing now, we've got all the information, so much information in our fingertips now. There's always been a saying from me growing up that I've heard from so many people is there's no rule book, or there's no no actual how-to guide on how to be a human, right? Or how to be a parent, or how to do this. And though there's a million out there now, it's all, the reality is it's actually not in our day-to-day way of learning ourselves, right? It's not in our schooling. It's not taught within societal constructs of the Western society of day to day, of knowing our body, knowing what energy is, and knowing what we are on a molecular level. Yes, we learn about stuff in biology and so forth and whatever, but we don't take that into factual ways of how do we deal with this shit, right? Like we hear about the amygdala, we might learn about the brain in bits and pieces, but what about all the bullshit around it, right? What about all the other scientific stuff out there in relation to the chemical reactions that are caused through certain aspects of that triggered it and whatever, like I think the more that we're able to find that stuff that we don't know, it really helps us be able to bring what our current experience into some sort of understanding. Can you touch on that, Brookie, in relation to, that stuff that we don't know until we source it, explore for it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, based on my awareness, the body, we can be going through different ailments or difficulties within our life, and we might not understand the root of them. And we may not have the conscious awareness yet to understand the root of our difficulties, and that's okay. And when I see that within therapy, what that reflects to me is that this person internally doesn't have safety yet, and this person's body doesn't feel safe enough to be able to open up those experiences to the person in front of me. And for a myriad of reasons, those emotions that are buried deep for a reason. And I feel like the first step forward is, okay, let's get an awareness of our foundation, let's get an awareness of our nervous system. Let's start super basic. We don't need to go into the trauma. Like, let's just start super basic. And so, understanding how, the fight flight system, just super basic things. And then, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to learn how how to breathe and to regulate myself, oh, I'm noticing I don't feel okay, I'm feeling a bit heightened. Okay, let's breathe. So just getting that foundation, so it gives you a loci of control again of your own self, of, yeah, cool, like I have the tools to regulate myself. Okay. And then, once we build that, like that stabilization of the nervous system and the soul being, we can then step into, building that, because that builds internal safety. So then we can step into, maybe processing, getting a bit of the emotions online, like, oh, I feel a bit angry today, or, getting that online, building that deeper connection. And then, organically, our bodies are going to feel safer, to be able to bring things into our awareness that may be shocking truths, and they normally are. And, something I just really want to reflect, because I find it's really important, especially given the current terrain and this focus on mindfulness and meditation. I think that those tools definitely play a part, and they're very important. However, when we are exploring our traumas and our emotions on a deeper level, bringing into awareness that, if you're having anger triggered, okay, society tells us, okay, we've got to calm ourselves. But actually, sometimes we have anger triggered because it's related to, the trauma. And it's like, no, we need to actually express that anger, not titrate it into this like calm wave. And in order for it to shift, as you get further down the journey. So I just really wanted to bring that into awareness, because I found that conflicting for myself on my journey. Always, okay, I've got to regulate myself. I've got to do my yoga. I've got to meditate, to keep calm and that. But when I started to feel safer with myself, I could explore those deeper emotions and be okay with them coming up, because I knew that I could hold space for them. And emotions, they only last a little bit. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that into awareness too.
Yeah, I think that's so important again, Brookie. And again, you touched on a really good thing there in regards to emotions, right? Because, we are told from, a very early age, it's indoctrinated into a lot of us, and not everyone, and I'm sure not everyone's experience is the same, but there is definitely a societal awareness out there in relation to anger, right? Like we get told that, oh no, that person's angry, oh, they shouldn't be angry, why are they angry, like, or whatever. There's a lot of that stuff out there. And and what I found personally for myself, that anger is not the issue. It's my relationship with anger that's the issue. For me, it's been for me over the years. It's my relationship with anger. It's the way I process it, the way that I interpret it, and the way that I express it, that cannot, or lack of expression, that could be potentially my issue with anger. Now, I think it's really important that emotions themselves, like you discussed, aren't the issue. Positive, negative, or what we may view as positive, negative, good or bad, all those sort of things. For me personally, it's been my relationship with with emotions. Is it, even if I'm to experience anger, now for many years I would beat myself up even thinking that I'm allowed to express anger, because that was a big part of my journey and something that I had to heal with, right? But even if anger comes up for me, what it's about now is the fact that I'm even aware that anger's coming up is huge.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's, for me, been something to work to, is being once we get to a point of understanding our feelings, understanding our emotions, understanding our body, however you do that, through whatever means, our relationship can change with them. How's
Definitely.
that for you?
Definitely. And like, I can really relate to the anger that you're talking about. And it was, my relationship with anger in the past has been like, oh, like I could feel it in my body, but I was like, okay, just like put it over here. And, when I built up the confidence within to look at, why am I fearing anger? When I looked under it and I spoke to that part of me, I was able to see, oh, wow, like the anger that is in me that I would like to express is really like quite ragey, and, you know, to the point of like almost could kill someone. Like that's how angry I was. And it was like, oh, okay, like no wonder, you know, anger's been put to bed within me, because I was so scared of what I would be capable of if I expressed that anger. And so when I became comfortable with that and changed my relationship and like, oh, that's fair enough that I was scared to express it. Okay. But, you know, I'm just letting you know, we can set up, you know, this is talking to myself. I was like, okay, let's just set up a space. And, you know, just an idea is, you know, I set up a space so that I could express my anger. And I, you know, put on Rage Against the Machine, put out pillows so that I can punch them, and like for a small child. And that's what I would do with children in therapy. So I just did it with myself. And then my relationship changed, because it was like, oh, wow, anger's actually like, all right, like it's okay in a contained space, you know. But when we suppress those emotions, they actually come out sideways. So we may have an unhealthy relationship to anger, but then it will come out sideways, like where we either abuse ourselves or we abuse the people we love. So that's when, yeah, we're going to be scared of anger, because we're hurting everyone, because we're not setting aside space for it and building our own relationship with it.
Yeah, 100%, Brooke. And even a lot of times I found personally myself with anger, you hurt yourself. You hurt yourself. So, for an unhealthy relationship that I had with anger, I was hurting myself. I was hurting myself so much with that unhealthy view and relationship I had it. And I think you're dead right. Like to get to that point where, you know, I think if I look back, I was scared. I was scared of what could be achieved at that high spectrum of aggression, right? Of pure unadulterated aggression. like it was that was scary. That was scary. And that's something that's a spectrum, right? That's a spectrum of anger. Now, where that spectrum is now is once I was able to accept that I'm capable of all areas of spectrum, and that I can get to a point for myself within that spectrum that I actually get choice. How do I want to show up in that anger? How do I want to experience that anger? And how do I want to show? Because for me, I actually found that anger can be quite motivating. Now, it can be quite healthy at the lower spectrums of what I would see the lower spectrums for myself of anger, right? It can get that fire in the belly and get that motivation and get that determination and get that drive and dedication and discipline if I channel it in the right way.
Definitely, Benjamin. And something I realized within myself too was, you know, when you work through those, let's say you have a build-up of anger from childhood and through life, you know, you have a big build-up, so it feels so big. So you're like, oh God, like, and it keeps rearing its head. And once you eventually, you know, work with anger and build a relationship with it and don't judge it, and it's like, okay, like I accept this to come through me, and it's okay. Once you build that, anger can be like one of your best mates, because now, like for me, you know, as a woman, I'll have anger come through, like even if a guy is being sexual towards me and I'm not interested and they're putting that energy on me, I'll have anger come through my body, and my body's letting me know this person is violating my boundaries of my personal space right now. So now I'm like, oh my God, thank you, anger, because it let me know. And then it lets me know the energy comes through me, through my belly, and then I have a voice and I'm like, excuse me, and can just set a clear boundary. So I think once we, you know, work through those deeper layers of any emotion, you know, and build the awareness of like, what's my emotions telling me? Like with sadness, okay, I've lost something that I really care about. Yeah, that's worth grieving for. Okay. You know, even a relationship dynamic may have changed and you may have grown and your friend may not have. And you're going to feel sadness around that. And it's like, okay, you know, how can I process my grief? Okay, you know, and finding ways for ourselves so that we can allow the emotion to just come through the body and because it's just, fundamentally, when we experience a truth, we experience emotion, right?
Yeah, totally.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and that's why we walk through life and we're like, we don't want to see the truth, because when you see the truth, it's the most liberating and freeing thing, but at the same time it's generally coupled with a bit of pain, right?
Yeah, and I think, change and action is usually coupled with that as well at times, and that doesn't mean that has to be the experience, and that doesn't mean that it has to be everyone's truth. But for me personally, major change that's been coupled within my life has usually been coupled with either pain or some sort of major change that's allowed me to come to a point where, and this has been spoken about before, come to a point where it's actually more painful to be where I am right in this moment, in this experience, than being able to step forward and go, well, I need to affect change to have a different life, to have a different experience, or to have a different outlook, right? And be open to that change. And I think that, again, yeah, as you said, it's so important to our relationship with our feelings is our personal experience. And for me personally, I knew, and I wasn't happy with my relationship with anger at the time. I wasn't happy with it. It wasn't about anyone else, though I certainly had a lot of guilt and everything around, how anger showed up in my life at times. I certainly look back and I go, well, more than anything, I didn't want the experience I was having. And the more that I listened to that part of me, the more I was able to look at able to look at it and go, well, how do I change this? How do I take my experience and create the relationship I want with anger? And that has been huge for me. And we're talking about anger in this moment, but this to me has been with being vulnerable in crying or being upset or being, or even, funnily enough, talking about that inner child stuff, having my relationship with fun, right? Or joy or happiness, or being vulnerable enough to be my old quirky self, to just not give a shit, right? And have that fun and have that, even though in those emotions, I had to change my relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely relate to what you're saying, Benjamin. And for me personally, like in the past, I was actually so dissociated from my anger and sadness that I didn't even know I was really experiencing them. And instead it would just come out through self-abuse, but I didn't know that anger and sadness were underneath that. Because those emotions for me, like what was underneath them was so painful for me that it was just easier to dissociate from them and live that way. But it was actually the most painful way of living, because it didn't work out very well doing that. And I felt like as time went on, the more I built the relationship with each of my emotions, with myself, inner child, all that, the more, as you said before, Benjamin, it was actually more painful to not be truthful than about what I was experiencing, which facilitates change, than to be where I was. And so I think the more that, we build those relationships with other parts of ourselves and strengthen those bonds, the more that when we are in a shitty situation, we're going to be like, nah, just can't do this. Like, nah, like it's going to be that strong that it's just like, nah, like this just has no part in my life, like walking away.
Yeah.
Great, David.
and that totally comes back to what we were talking about before, right? About discernment and those boundaries for ourselves, and being okay and safe enough and supporting ourselves in being able to say no when needed, or yes when required, right? And that again is huge. Is there anything else that you'd like to tap into, Brookie, or any conversation that's coming up for you right now?
Well, something I did want to tap into is just to touch on what you've just said, because you got to touch on everything, Benjamin.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But, when you're talking about saying no, like, I also just want to reflect to the audience to tune into that, because for me personally, saying no, I was like, oh, okay, like, for instance, doing things like, no, I don't want to hang out today, but it actually is a lot deeper than that. And saying no can be being in a, let's say you're being used as a, what do they call it, Benjamin? A doormat. Let's say you're being used as a doormat in a situation, and you can say no in that moment. So I just want to bring back, the choice to say no in any moment. And it's not just, to an opportunity or to someone asking you to hang out or do something. Like, it's actually in the moment. You can walk away from an interaction. If you feel a friend's not healthy for you, you can walk away from that. Like, you actually have a choice. And yeah, I just feel like that's a really important point, because for ages I didn't actually even realize that for myself. And when that came online, my whole reality shifted.
Yeah.
And the choice.
Yeah, it is. And I think, as you said, Brookie, it's and that was the same for me too, right? And I'm not gonna, and I'm gonna be completely blunt and honest. It was bloody painful to say no. It was so painful that I felt like I was the worst person in the world at times. And realistically, at times, the other person couldn't have given a shit. It was all my internal stuff. Like, if I look back at some of those scenarios and I look back at some of those experiences, it actually had nothing to do with them. It was all my internal reasoning and my internal, truth and belief, and some of the stuff that was going on internally that was creating my experience in saying no. It actually, a lot of the time, because let's be honest, like the times that I have been used as a doormat, when I said no, they didn't give a fuck. Because they didn't see me. They didn't see me as a worthy part of their life, or something they wanted to invest in, right? Or something they wanted to invest their energy in. So the more I look back, it was about me and my boundaries and my awareness. And now certainly the opposite can also exist, that that people are forcing themselves or doing other things, or invading people's space, and there are all those things exist as well. But for my personal experiences, that it was really my own internal dialogue that was the issue, not necessarily saying no to that person or that relationship.
And the flip side of that, Benjamin, thank you for sharing, is that when we do start to say no, it also shows you people's true colors.
Yeah.
So yeah, it may be painful in the moment, but it's a blessing in disguise, because to continuously be surrounded by people that, need you or for something, it's not a real relationship, right? So if you then say no and someone reacts to that, that shows you, a red flag. Or because at the end of the day, a healthy relationship is about really, wanting the people that you're around to be in their truth and to articulate themselves, to be able to be in tune with what they do need and what they don't need, to respect people. And, I just really wanted to reflect that back, because it's, it can be a great tool to see where your relationships are at and who's worth being around.
Yeah, I think that you're dead right, and that's very important. And in saying that, again, that's definitely been my experience. Though it was a painful one. It was a hard lesson to learn, right? And it was one that, again, that I had a lot of struggle with in relationships that I really saw as, even for myself, potentially even needed or wanted or whatever. The more that I was standing in my truth and being who I was, and the more that I was able to articulate who I am and what I am, people's perceptions or other people's relationships with me changed, and I wondered what it was about me. But the reality was, as you said, it really just showed true colors to where that relationship sat.
Definitely. 100%. And that, I feel like that was one of my most painful lessons, was when I had to, but I didn't have to, but I chose to get really real regarding who was surrounding me. And It was painful, yeah, because oh my God, being in that space of, you think that you're friends with certain people, and then when you articulate certain boundaries and they're not respected, that's a painful truth.
Yeah.
But it's the only way to freedom, right? Because then you get surrounded by your proper tribe and the people that really want you to grow and want you, they care about your health, they care about you also. And it's so bi-directional, the relationship.
Yeah, 100%, Brookie, 100%. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to touch on at the moment?
I think we covered a lot.
I think we did.
And I do want to touch on one thing.
Go for it.
I just want to say to everyone, I know that everyone's doing the best that they can. And I just want to reflect to everyone, keep going, even if I'm looking back at my journey, there was moments where I'm like, oh shit, how am I going to get through this? And yeah, I just want to say, just keep going, because it will get easier if you do the work, and doing the work is feeling and remembering the truth. And yeah, I just want to stand so solidly in that message, because it's so important to be reflected that on your journey.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Brookie, and I think that's the whole true warrior by design is tapping into that inner aspects of ourselves. And, and I'm taking that word warrior back and going, well, that warrior is within all of us, right? And that little bit of fire that's in us that allows us to have the drive each day to be able to take moment by moment to continue on our path and shine our light, however that is for us, is so important. And I think that's so amazing. And thank you so much, Brookie, for sharing your wisdom. And can you please just share with everyone where they can hit you up or where they can contact you if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, so if you want to find out more, just go to nectarpsychology.com.au, and that's nectar, Nektar.
Awesome, Brookie. Thank you so much. I've got one final question, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if you were to go back in time and spend 30 seconds with yourself, what wisdom would you share with your warrior within to create by design? Also, at what age would that be and why?
Benjamin, that was 3 questions.
I have a question sentence for you.
Can't trick me. Okay, so the wisdom that I actually had this bounce through the other day. So I'd probably be 5 years old, and I would share with myself, actually. This sounds funny, but I'd be like, to my little self, I'd be like, just be so connected to humanity and literally do not give a shit about what anyone thinks of you, because you cannot please everyone. If you just act in accordance with your values and just keep following the light, And the reason why I would give myself that advice and that little bit of wisdom is because I feel like along our life journey, we can be the light, and we can be in the light no matter what has happened to us. And often, it'll be like different energies of different people and stuff trying to pull us into those darker shades of gray. And, just really discerning that and being like, nah, like I'm staying in my light, and not being pulled into everyone's stuff, to have to help them fix them, So that would definitely be the wisdom that I'd give to myself, and just keep shining, keep playing, just be yourself, just keep going.
What a word of wisdom that I would love to give that information to my 5-year-old self too, Brookie. Thank you so much. And I loved having you on here. And I knew it'd be fun, and I knew it'd be full of wisdom. So thank you so much. And remember, guys, explore, create, and be. Lots of love.
Well, thank you for listening. If you found this episode valuable,
please take the time to like, share and subscribe. It really does make a difference. It helps others out there explore their warrior, create a life of choice by design, and be all that they wish to be. Remember, explore, create and be.